Ladies and gentlemen, I want to talk to you today about something that might sound a little confusing, even contradictory. It's something we've all felt, seen, or maybe even been hurt by. It's this idea the one who loves you a lot ignores you a lot. Now, I know what you're thinking. How can the same person who loves you deeply sometimes seem to disappear, act distant, or even seem disinterested? How can the one who cares so much for you, who says they'd move mountains, leave you feeling lost in the cold? Why do they ignore you? Why, when you want closeness, do they put up walls? Here's what I've come to learn. Sometimes people need time to sort through their emotions, to process the depth of what they're feeling. And while they're doing that, they may draw inward. They may go silent, not because they don't want you, but because they need to understand how to hold you without losing themselves. Love, especially when it's profound, requires us to find balance. Some people handle that by keeping their distance. This doesn't mean we should excuse continuous or hurtful patterns. Loving someone doesn't mean ignoring them indefinitely, keeping them in the dark, or causing harm. Healthy love requires honesty, openness, and respect. But if you're ever in a place where you're questioning someone's love because they seem distant, it's worth considering that their silence may not be a lack of love, but a reflection of its weight. It's a paradox, I know. It's something that requires patience and sometimes even letting go just a little bit. Give them the grace to grow. Because in real love, growth is part of the journey. Real love takes time to unfold. It takes space to breathe. And sometimes in those moments of silence, you may just find that their love and all its quiet mystery is more profound than you could have ever imagined. Thank you. When someone loves you deeply, the intensity of their emotions can sometimes overwhelm them. They may need space to process their feelings, not because they love you any less, but because they are trying to understand how to navigate the depth of that love. Love makes us vulnerable. The more we care for someone, the more afraid we are of being hurt, rejected, or losing them. Ignoring you can be a defense mechanism, a way of protecting themselves from the vulnerability that comes with loving someone so much. Deep love can bring emotional turbulence. Sometimes when someone loves you a lot, they might need to withdraw to manage their emotions, especially if they feel overwhelmed by how deeply they care or by the pressures that love brings. When someone loves you deeply, they may also have insecurities about whether they're worthy of that love or if they're doing enough. This self-doubt can cause them to pull away, thinking they're not enough for you, or that their presence will cause more harm than good. Sometimes the person who loves you deeply might not want to burden you with their own problems, so they withdraw, hoping to deal with their struggles on their own before they involve you. They may believe that by keeping their distance, they're actually protecting you. The one who loves you might need time to focus on their own personal growth, healing, or self-improvement. They may know that in order to love you the way you deserve, they need to first be whole themselves, and that requires time away from you to do the necessary work. Love can create conflict within a person, especially when they have unresolved issues or complicated feelings. They may withdraw because they don't fully understand their own emotions or how to express them without hurting you, leading them to distance themselves while they sort things out. When someone loves you deeply, the intensity of their feelings can often feel like a force beyond their control. Love in its purest form is powerful. It can fill the heart with joy and excitement, but it can also stir up anxiety and fear. The emotional weight of truly loving someone can be overwhelming, so much so that the one who loves you may find themselves retreating, even though their feelings for you are undeniable. This is not a sign of weakness or a lack of affection, but rather an expression of how hard it can be to navigate such powerful emotions. The initial stages of love are often the most exhilarating. The thrill of discovering someone new, sharing intimate moments, and feeling as though you are deeply understood can be electrifying. But as the relationship deepens, so too does the intensity of the emotions involved. What once felt like excitement can gradually evolve into a kind of emotional saturation. The one who loves you might feel as though they're carrying the weight of their feelings for you every moment. It's a responsibility that weighs heavily on their heart and mind. The closer they grow to you, the more they realize how much they stand to lose, and that realization can be both beautiful and terrifying. When love becomes overwhelming, it often comes with the fear of vulnerability. The deeper the affection, the more exposed one becomes. Loving someone means allowing them to see your flaws, your scars, and your imperfections. For many, this is a daunting prospect. The fear of being rejected or hurt by someone you care about so deeply can cause a person to withdraw, even when their feelings for you are incredibly strong. The act of pulling back is not necessarily because they want to distance themselves from you, but because they are trying to protect themselves from the intensity of their own emotions. They may want to shield themselves from the pain that could come with loving you too much. The fear of losing someone you love can also make love feel like a burden rather than a joy. When love is overwhelming, it's often accompanied by the thought, what if I lose them? The more you love someone, the more you realize how much you have to lose. That fear can sometimes become all-encompassing. The one who loves you might ignore you or pull away, not because they no longer care for you, but because the thought of losing you is too painful to face. They may distance themselves to protect their own heart from the inevitable pain they anticipate if things were to fall apart. The weight of this fear can be so heavy that it feels easier to withdraw than to stay close, where the risk of hurt feels more real. Another aspect of overwhelming love is the emotional turbulence it can cause. When someone loves you deeply, their emotions can swing wildly between happiness, joy, insecurity, and fear. It's easy to become emotionally drained when the heart is so full of conflicting emotions. The highs can be incredibly high, but the lows, when they inevitably come, can feel crushing. The emotional energy required to sustain a relationship, especially one that is profoundly meaningful, can sometimes leave the person who loves you feeling exhausted and in need of a break. This exhaustion doesn't come from a lack of care, but from the constant emotional investment that love demands. The overwhelming nature of love can also be a reflection of the pressure one feels to be the best version of themselves for their partner. Love often brings out our highest aspirations, our desire to be the kind of person who makes the other happy, who rises to meet the expectations that love brings. The more deeply someone loves you, the more they want to be the person who fulfills your needs and desires. But this desire to be everything for someone can lead to feelings of inadequacy when they feel they fall short. It's a heavy burden to carry, and the pressure to be perfect can lead to a retreat into silence or distance as they struggle with their own internal expectations. In the face of overwhelming love, it's also important to acknowledge the role of self-preservation. The one who loves you may withdraw in an attempt to maintain a sense of control over their emotions and their life. When love becomes all-consuming, it can be easy to lose sight of who you are as an individual. Sometimes the act of pulling away is not a rejection of you, but an attempt to hold on to their own identity, their own sense of self. The deeper the love, the more important it becomes to retain a sense of individuality, to preserve the parts of themselves that exist outside the relationship. When someone loves deeply, there often comes a potent, visceral fear, the fear of vulnerability. To truly love means to expose oneself, to place one's heart, feelings, and even soul in the hands of another. This openness, this nakedness of spirit, leaves a person vulnerable in ways that can be thrilling, yes, but also profoundly frightening. For many, the fear of being so raw, so entirely seen, can lead them to pull back or retreat despite the strength of their love. Vulnerability in love is a complex state. It involves showing your partner parts of yourself that you may not even acknowledge to yourself: insecurities, childhood wounds, fears of inadequacy. It's standing before someone without the protective barriers we usually wear, letting them see the real, unfiltered self. For some, this openness feels natural. For others, it feels like standing on the edge of a cliff, ready to be pushed by the winds of emotion at any moment. The more a person loves, the higher the stakes become, and the more terrifying the prospect of being fully vulnerable can feel. In moments of intense love, the desire to let someone in clashes with the need to protect oneself. Often people who love deeply feel an inner conflict. They want to be close, to share, to lean on someone, but they also fear the risk of showing too much. This fear of vulnerability isn't necessarily a reflection of any shortcoming in their love. Rather, it speaks to the depth of that love and the inherent risk they perceive in sharing it fully. When someone loves another person intensely, they are giving that person the power to hurt them in ways no one else can. And that power, even in the hands of someone trustworthy, can feel like a dangerous thing to give. In the same way, some people fear that by being completely vulnerable, they will reveal flaws, weaknesses, or imperfections that they believe may be unacceptable or unlovable. They fear that if they are fully known, they will be rejected. It's common for people who love deeply To be their own worst critics, they may judge themselves harshly in fear that their partner will do the same if they show too much. So instead of risking exposure, they might distance themselves, hoping to keep their flaws hidden and thus preserve the relationship. This withdrawal is not an indication of lessened love, but rather a manifestation of their fear that their love will not be strong enough to withstand the test of full transparency. Being vulnerable also means trusting another person with your dreams, your fears, your ambitions, and your insecurities. It means allowing someone to see your rawest, most genuine self without the shield of pretense or bravado. For many, this act of trust is a leap they are both eager and terrified to make. When love feels so intense, they may feel the stakes are even higher. If they reveal themselves fully, they risk being hurt in ways that they might not easily recover from. This vulnerability can feel like the greatest act of trust. And while they may deeply want to share it, they are equally fearful of the pain that could come if that trust is ever broken. For some, pulling back in love is an act of self-protection. It's a way to shield themselves from the potential loss that comes with love. The thought of giving oneself entirely, of fully loving and being loved, means accepting the possibility of heartbreak. The fear of losing someone they love is so daunting that they may believe it's safer to maintain some distance rather than face the possibility of loss. By holding back, they feel they are preserving a piece of themselves, a piece that won't be shattered if things ever go wrong. In many cases, the person who loves deeply may not know how to process or articulate the range of emotions they're experiencing. Love can bring out parts of themselves they weren't aware of, triggering insecurities, doubts, and unresolved feelings from past relationships or experiences. All these emotions mix together, sometimes without warning, creating a sense of inner chaos. The person who loves you may need space not because they don't want you close, but because they need to sort through their feelings. They may need time alone to understand what they're feeling and to make sense of the changes taking place within themselves. The emotional overload doesn't mean they love you any less, rather. It's a sign of just how deeply they care. Emotional overload in love can also result from the pressure of wanting to be everything their partner needs. Often, people who love intensely put a lot of pressure on themselves to make their partner happy, to live up to the idealized version of love they've created in their minds. This sense of responsibility can be heavy. They may feel that every word, every action, and every decision they make matters greatly, adding to the pressure they place on themselves. In trying to live up to these self-imposed expectations, they may feel overwhelmed, unsure if they are doing enough, or worried about falling short. This constant self-evaluation can be emotionally exhausting, and it may lead them to withdraw as a means of finding relief from the pressure. For some, the intensity of their love can lead to emotional burnout. When you give so much of yourself to someone without taking enough time to recharge, it can be easy to feel depleted. This can be particularly true in situations where someone is also dealing with other stressors in their life, such as work, family issues, or personal challenges. The emotional energy required to sustain a deep, meaningful relationship can add to these existing stresses, creating a cumulative effect that leaves them feeling drained. In these moments, stepping back becomes a way for them to regain their energy, to process everything that's going on internally, and to come back to the relationship with a clearer, more balanced mindset. When someone loves deeply, they often face a profound and complex inner struggle with insecurity and self-doubt. These feelings can emerge even more strongly in the presence of genuine love. And ironically, the more someone cares for another person, the more vulnerable they may feel. They become acutely aware of their imperfections, questioning their worthiness and wondering if they are enough. This internal dialogue, filled with questions and uncertainties, can drive a person to pull back or even ignore the one they love, not because of a lack of affection, but because of a fear that they may ultimately fall short. For someone who loves deeply, the stakes of the relationship feel incredibly high. The thought of losing the person they love becomes a looming fear, and the closer they grow, the more anxious they might feel about keeping the relationship strong. This anxiety often manifests as a form of self-doubt. They may question their abilities to meet the needs of their partner, to provide happiness, and to be a steady presence. Rather than feeling empowered by their love, they might feel as though they are constantly falling short. And these feelings can cause them to distance themselves to avoid exposing their perceived weaknesses. The inner conflict they experience is not about their feelings for you, but rather their own internal struggle to feel good enough to be with you. Sometimes a person's struggles involve issues they feel embarrassed or ashamed about, and they may think that admitting these challenges would burden the relationship. These struggles could be related to work, family, mental health, or personal insecurities. Shame, particularly, can be a powerful silencer. People often believe that their problems make them unworthy or inadequate. When someone struggles with shame, they may worry that revealing these parts of themselves would bring discomfort or conflict into the relationship. Even if they intellectually know that you would accept and support them, their emotional reaction is to conceal the issue, hoping to manage it alone. This need to handle their struggles privately isn't a reflection of distrust. It's a coping mechanism born out of a fear of vulnerability. Relationships are complex, and they thrive on a foundation of two people who are secure and fulfilled in their own lives. When one partner feels that they need space, it often means they are seeking time to reconnect with the things that make them who they are outside of the relationship. This may involve revisiting hobbies, exploring personal interests, setting individual goals, or even working through challenges. Personal growth requires time and focus, and sometimes the intense emotions and closeness of a deep relationship can make it hard for someone to devote energy to self-development. In seeking space, they're not pulling away from their partner emotionally. They're simply making room to nurture their own growth so they can come back to the relationship feeling more whole and fulfilled. It's also important to recognize that relationships can sometimes create pressure to conform or to prioritize the needs and goals of the partnership over one's own aspirations. Someone who loves deeply may worry that by focusing on themselves, they'll appear selfish or disconnected. Yet, in reality, taking time for personal growth is often an act of love and respect for both partners. When individuals continue to grow and learn independently, they bring new insights, energy, and perspective back to the relationship. In a way, giving oneself space to grow is a way to ensure that the relationship remains dynamic and evolving rather than becoming stagnant or overly dependent. Sometimes the need for space reflects a desire to test one's independence and resilience. People who have been in long-term relationships may wonder how they would fare on their own, separate from the relationship's comfort. This isn't an indication of doubt or a desire to end the partnership. It's more about understanding their own capacity to thrive independently. They may want to ensure that they're not losing their identity in the relationship or that they're not becoming overly reliant on their partner for happiness and fulfillment. By taking time for themselves, they affirm their independence, cultivating a sense of personal strength that adds depth to the relationship. Knowing they can stand on their own makes their choice to be with their partner more meaningful, as it's based on genuine desire rather than dependency. One of the most common sources of confusion is the pressure that love itself can bring. When someone cares deeply about another person, they may feel overwhelmed by the intensity of their emotions and the responsibility that comes with them. Loving someone deeply often means a heightened level of vulnerability and trust, which can be both exhilarating and terrifying. This dichotomy can lead to a struggle between wanting to be close to the person they love and fearing what that closeness could mean for their sense of self. They may wonder if they are ready to open themselves up fully, to let go of their defenses, and to commit wholeheartedly, even as part of them resists the idea of surrendering control over their own emotional state. This internal struggle is often intensified by a fear of losing one's identity within the relationship. When someone loves profoundly, they can begin to question how much of themselves they're willing to share or sacrifice for the partnership. They may worry about losing parts of who they are or feel conflicted about prioritizing the relationship over personal goals. This confusion isn't due to a lack of love. It's more about a desire to preserve their individuality while also embracing intimacy. They may feel torn between their own dreams and the shared dreams they have with their partner, creating a push-pull dynamic that's often misinterpreted as indecision or ambivalence. The reality is that this struggle reflects their respect for both their personal growth and the relationship, though it often manifests in ways that seem confusing or even distant. Another challenge that arises from past hurt is the tendency to compare new relationships with old ones. People may unconsciously look for similarities between their current partner and the person who caused them pain, searching for warning signs or potential red flags. This habit of comparison can be detrimental, as it prevents them from seeing their new partner for who they truly are. Overcoming this requires a conscious effort to let go of past narratives and to approach the new relationship with an open heart. By recognizing that each relationship is unique, they can begin to release the grip of past experiences and allow their current partner to show them a different kind of love. Forgiveness is also an essential aspect of overcoming past hurt, though it's often misunderstood. Forgiving someone who hurt us doesn't mean condoning their actions or forgetting the pain they caused. Instead, forgiveness is about freeing oneself from the weight of anger and resentment. Holding on to bitterness can be emotionally exhausting, and it can prevent a person from fully embracing a new relationship. Through forgiveness, they allow themselves to release the emotional burden of the past, opening up space for positive experiences. Forgiveness is a personal journey, and it may take time, but it can be incredibly liberating. Sometimes people also need to forgive themselves. They may feel guilty for allowing themselves to be hurt or for not recognizing warning signs sooner. They might even feel regret for staying in a painful relationship for too long. These self-judgments can be as damaging as the hurt itself, as they reinforce feelings of inadequacy and self-blame. Forgiving oneself is an act of compassion, a way of acknowledging that everyone makes mistakes and that growth is possible even after painful experiences. Through self-forgiveness, people can start to rebuild their self-respect and self-worth, empowering themselves to move forward. Healing from past hurt often involves cultivating a sense of patience. Emotional wounds don't heal overnight, and expecting oneself to get over it can create additional pressure. The journey of overcoming hurt is filled with ups and downs, moments of progress and moments of doubt. Accepting that healing is not linear but a gradual process allows a person to be kinder to themselves. This patience also extends to the relationship as they learn to communicate openly with their partner about their fears, doubts, and triggers. Through open dialogue, they can create a supportive environment that allows for mutual understanding and growth. Overcoming past hurt also involves redefining expectations. People who have been hurt may have developed certain assumptions about relationships, such as the belief that love inevitably leads to pain or that trust will eventually be broken. These expectations can become self-fulfilling prophecies as they subconsciously act in ways that align with these beliefs. By challenging these negative expectations and creating new positive beliefs about love, they allow themselves to approach the relationship with renewed hope. Replacing limiting beliefs with affirmations of trust, joy, and safety can help them reshape their view of relationships, enabling them to experience love in a more fulfilling way. Unspoken expectations are one of the most common, yet often overlooked, challenges in relationships. These are the assumptions, hopes, or standards that one person holds for their partner or the relationship as a whole, but they often go uncommunicated. Sometimes these expectations are so deeply rooted that a person may not even realize they hold them, or they might assume that their partner should just know what they want or need. However, when expectations are left unspoken, they can create misunderstandings, resentment, and frustration, as each partner may unknowingly disappoint or hurt the other. The result is a disconnect where both people feel misunderstood or unsupported, even when they care deeply about each other. Everyday routines and household responsibilities are another common source of unspoken expectations. Many people have specific ideas about how chores should be divided, how weekends should be spent, or how they'll handle day-to-day decisions. They might expect their partner to notice when something needs to be done, like washing the dishes or taking out the trash, but if these expectations aren't communicated, one partner might assume that everything is fine, while the other grows increasingly frustrated. When one person feels they're doing more than their fair share but doesn't speak up, it can create an imbalance that leads to feelings of resentment. Discussing these expectations can clarify each person's needs and lead to a more equitable, respectful division of responsibilities. Sometimes unspoken expectations stem from the belief that expressing needs or desires will burden the partner or lead to conflict. A person may feel that by stating their needs outright, they're being too much or demanding, so they hold back, hoping their partner will simply understand without needing to be told. This approach, however, rarely leads to satisfaction, as it leaves both people guessing and often feeling inadequate. The fear of creating conflict or appearing needy can keep many people silent, even though clear communication could actually prevent the very conflict they fear. Recognizing that open communication is a form of respect and trust can help break the cycle and lead to a more fulfilling partnership. Closeness in a relationship is about intimacy, sharing, and togetherness. It's the feeling of being seen, understood, and appreciated by another person, which brings a sense of safety and warmth. This closeness allows couples to experience a shared life, where they can support each other through challenges and celebrate each other's successes. Being close to a partner often means spending quality time together, having meaningful conversations, and being emotionally present. When people feel connected, they tend to feel more satisfied, supported, and understood, making closeness a powerful component of a strong relationship. Achieving a balance between closeness and independence often requires open communication. Partners must discuss their needs and boundaries, which may shift over time depending on life changes, work, or personal growth. This means talking about how much time they want to spend together versus alone, what their individual goals are, and how they envision a supportive relationship. By communicating openly, couples can better understand each other's expectations and ensure that both people feel valued and respected. Communication also helps in setting boundaries, as each partner can express what they need to feel both connected and free. Respecting these boundaries is essential, as it reinforces trust and shows that each person values the other's individuality. A key aspect of balancing closeness and independence is learning to appreciate the other person's interests and goals. When each partner has their own passions, they bring new energy and perspective to the relationship. Sharing what each has learned or experienced on their own can lead to exciting conversations and mutual growth. Encouraging a partner to pursue what makes them happy doesn't mean losing them. It often strengthens the relationship as each person sees the other grow. This support fosters a bond built on mutual respect and admiration rather than dependency. By celebrating each other's independence, couples create a positive environment where both people feel motivated to explore new experiences, knowing they have a supportive partner cheering them on. Maintaining this balance also involves respecting each other's need for personal space. Just as people need physical space, they also need emotional space to process thoughts, reflect, or recharge. For some, alone time is essential for mental and emotional well-being, and taking this time can make them more present and engaged when they're with their partner. Understanding that needing space isn't a rejection but a natural need can prevent misunderstandings and feelings of rejection. When couples respect each other's need for solitude, it allows both partners to take care of themselves without feeling guilty or misunderstood. Trust is a fundamental element in balancing closeness and independence. Trust allows both partners to feel secure in the relationship even when they're apart. When trust is strong, there's no need for constant reassurance or for one partner to keep tabs on the other. Trusting each other's loyalty and commitment allows each person the freedom to pursue their interests and friendships without feeling guilty or suspicious. This trust is what makes independence possible without compromising closeness, as each person knows they are valued and loved, regardless of how they spend their time apart.